Welcome to Evergreen, Colorado this evening. One thing that, being a young man in my 20s, fresh out of college and coming back home to Colorado, taught me about poetry is that sometimes the real poetry isn't what happens in the universities or schools. Sometimes the real poetry is what's happening in the lives of people living in the inner cities and living in rural areas, just people for whom the poetry angel, the muse, whatever you call her, infects people in a way that they give their lives to the service of that art. And a remarkable thing about that time back in the mid-1980s was meeting a community of poets from all walks of life, not just from academia, but poets who came from an incredible variety of place and life experience, and bringing with that life experience an incredible depth. And these are poets, so many of them are poets that I still know today, who are still writing, who are still creating, and that's of love. That's poetry as an act of love, as a way of living in this world and being in this world. And I am so delighted tonight to welcome two poets that I've been seeing read for 3 decades or longer now, Jimmy BERNATH and Guillermo Lazo, and we're going to start with Jimmy BERNATH.
Thank you, Padma. Yeah, I'd like to share some poems. I do have some original stuff, but this time of year, I'm a Scorpio, so I always tend to get autumnal and Halloweenish. I'm going to be 69 on Halloween, and so I want to share some of those kind of poems first, and then I'll do a couple of originals. But the first and foremost poet I always like to invoke in October is Mr. Edgar Allan Poe, and this one I'm sure most of you have heard, maybe know by heart. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived, whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not so happy, not half so happy in heaven, when envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. And this is called Indian Summer by Danska Dandridge. I don't know who that is particularly, but I think it was written at least 100 years ago. Yes, the sweet summer lingers still. The hares loiter on the hill. The year, a spendthrift growing old, is scattering his lavish gold for a last pleasure. The robins flock, but would not go. We share the world with footsteps slow, in sober leisure, or sit beneath the chestnut tree, our hands in silent company. Not yet, dear friend, we part, not yet. Full soon the last warm sun will set. The cricket cease to stir the grass. The gold and amber fade away. The scarlet from the landscape pass, and all the sky be sodden gray. Too soon, alas, the frost must fall, and blight the asters on the hill, the goldenrod, the gentians, all, and we must feel the parting chill. But oh, not yet we part. The summer strains us to her heart. The world is all a golden smile, and we may love a little while. The summer dies, and hearts forget, and we must part. Not yet, not yet. And now we're going to get to the scary stuff. This is The Edge of the Cliff by Roberto Bolaño, the great Chilean poet and novelist. In hotels resembling live organisms, in hotels like the inside of a lap dog, sunken in ash, the one guy, half naked, kept playing the same song over and over, and a woman, the holographic projection of a woman, kept going out on the terrace to contemplate nightmares or splinters. No one understood a thing. Everything was off, the sound, the perception of the image. Nightmares or splinters slipped into the sky at 9 o'clock at night, in hotels resembling live organisms from horror films. Like when you dream of killing a person who never stops dying, or like that other dream, the one with the guy who avoids a robbery or rape and punches the assailant until he's thrown to the ground and then keeps punching him, and a voice, but what voice, asks the assailant, what's his name? And the assailant says your name, and you stop hitting him and say, that can't be, that's my name. And the voices say it's a coincidence, but deep down you've never believed in coincidences. And you say, we must be related. You're the son of one of my uncles or cousins. But when you lift him up and look at him, so thin, so fragile, you understand that this story too is a lie. You are the assailant, the rapist, the inept hoodlum who wanders through the useless streets of the dream. And then you return to the coleopteran hotels, to the spider hotels, to read poetry on the edge of the cliff. Okay, I better throw one of mine in here. This is a lyric. I'm pretty much a lyric poet, and this is one I wrote, and I tend to write these narrative lyrics. This one is one I wrote for my BFF, the Earthfire Girl, and it's called A Musical Outing. Earthfire Girl and the Singing Night set out on a morning fair and bright, along with a dog that they call Buzz, short for Buzzard, just because, heading for a place they'd never been, not Half Moon Bay or East Berlin, but that shotgun shack up on the hill, where lived a country boy named Blue Whippoorwill. Legend had it that Blue could play magic tunes on a flute made of clay, and Earthfire Girl was determined to know how the flute was made that he did blow, 'cause she had some alchemy of her own when it came to mud and paint and stone. So up they traipsed as the night sang a song, and Earthfire's crow flute played along. Buzz was content to lead the way, as though they came here every day, and barked now and then for no good reason, except to approve of the song and the season. The crows followed Earthfire naturally, a caw-caw counterpoint to the flute's melody. They were her totem and she their muse. She played hosannas and they sang the blues. Then all of a sudden they all grew still, as a strange song wafted down the hill, a sweet tenor voice singing mysterious words that struck fear into those raucous birds, and they flew back to town with shrieks and cries in 5 minutes flat as the crow flies. And while the humans stood rooted to the spot, Buzz leaped forward and began to trot up the trail at a goodly speed. This was a beckoning song indeed. It seemed to speak of wolves and trees and primal scents that flowed on the breeze. The girl and her knight, now close behind, the source of the song they were itching to find. And soon 8 running legs stopped in a group before a blue whippoorwill perched on his stoop. With a grin as wide as a forest clearing and a gleam in his eye just as endearing, he sang a song, then tootled the flute with some rapid runs, followed by a woot that widened even the hound dog's eyes. The singing knight hooted back to the kid's surprise and began to sing along word for word, even though the song he'd never heard. From the clay into the sky, dig the bead and let it fly, over and over and always new, fired and finished from me to you. The kiln is hot just like a heart, dig the bead and let it start, breathing life into the air that we all share, that we all share. Soon they were jamming up on that hill, the lovers and the kid called Blue Whippoorwill, with buzzard chiming in a musical whine, and it all carried down the rocky incline, where the townsfolk caught it on a breeze, with a syncopated rustle as it came through the trees, and wondered if the kid had cast a spell on Earthfire, Night, and the dog as well, with his flute of clay and his golden throat, to make them follow along note for note. And it must have been true, because they never again saw those 3 in that village of men. They built a cabin on that mountain top, where they could play and sing non-stop if they so desired, and they often did. And they made a family with that kid, made their magic flutes that were sold worldwide. In rhythm and harmony they did abide, and that family grew, and the secrets were passed, a musical dynasty built to last. And then I want to recite this one, but it needs a little backstory. I was born in Greenfield, Indiana, which is also the home of James Whitcomb Riley, who 100 years ago was world-renowned as the Hoosier poet. And being a kid in Greenfield, my grandparents, everybody there adored James Whitcomb Riley, and we always got read his poetry, bedtime stories and everything. But this time of year, there was one special poem that we always got, and I want to recite it. And James Whitcomb Riley wrote most of his poetry in that kind of Midwestern dialect, and he wrote a lot of it in the voice of a child, which his own childhood. So I want to kind of regress and channel both my own childhood and my grandfather reading this poem to me, and James Whitcomb Riley as a child. And this is probably his most famous poem. It's called Little Orphan Annie. Little Orphan Annie's come to our house to stay, to wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch, and dust the hearth and sweep, and make the fire and bake the bread, and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we sit around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun, listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins that gets you if you don't watch out. And once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers, And when he went to bed at night, way upstairs, his mammy heard him holler. His daddy heard him bawl. But when they turned the kivers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room, and cubbyhole, and press. And they seeked him up the chimney flue, and everywheres, I guess. But all they ever found was just his pants and roundabout. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And once the little girl would always laugh and grin, make fun of everyone, all of her kith and kin. And once, when there was company, and old folks was there, she mocked them, and she shocked them, and she said she didn't care. Just as she kicked her heels up and turned to run and hide, there was two big black things standing by her side. And they snatched her through the ceiling, where she knowed what she was about. The goblins will get you if you don't watch out. The little orphan Annie says, and the blaze is blue, and the lamp wick sputters, and the wind goes hoo, and you hear the crickets quit, the moon is gray, and the lightning bugs and dew is all squinched away. You better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them that loves you, and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones that clusters all about. The goblins will get you if you don't watch out. Thank you.
So I think we'll be seeing a little bit more from Jimmy later. You're going to do some haiku for us?
Yes, yes.
We have a real treat also tonight in Guillermo Lazo, formerly the editor of Rocky Mountain Arsenal of the Arts, of Baculite Publications. He published a couple of my books many, many years ago. Guillermo's life experience has been extraordinary. He has lived in 4 different countries in Latin America. He also served our country during Desert Storm in Iraq back in the early 90s. A man of incredible grace and dignity and remarkable humanity and compassion. He's always been one of my favorite poets in Denver, and I'm really delighted to welcome him here. Guillermo Lazo. And accompanied by Michael Miera, who I would give a greater introduction to, but I only met him this evening, so hopefully he'll tell you a little bit about himself.